Ms. Shah, thank you so much for speaking with the CSR Journal. First, I'd like to know about what are the kind of activities that Metropolis has initiated.
So, Metropolis actually has been in healthcare now for almost 35 years, and we've had the privilege really of impacting millions of lives across the country and across actually 6 countries. We've been very keen to make sure that we pick agendas that we can really make a difference in. And we've picked one of them, which is in the PCOS area. PCOS stands for polycystic ovary syndrome. And basically, it affects all young women or old women. But it can lead to kind of a lot of complications in pregnancy, potential pregnancies, in infertility. And it's something which most people are not aware of. So people have the symptoms of, hirsutism, hair on their face, or they have acne, or they have skin issues. That it comes up, or weight gain. It comes up in many forms. And because people are not aware, they start treating the symptoms rather than the underlying problem, which a lot of the times is PCOS. Okay. 1 in 10 women in India, we suspect, have it, and 1 in 10 women globally have it. And our agenda really is to really create awareness on the subject and be able to impact women in the area. We of course have impacted on various fronts, not only gynecology, but neurology, nephrology, gastroenterology, etc. But this is the agenda that we're picking today.
Okay. When we look at the health sector at large, there's a lot of money that gets invested from the CSR part. It's either the second or the third sector, which has huge amounts of funds invested. Do you actually see any of the change coming about? And people being more aware, they're talking about it, coming out of the closet and talking about issues. Do you see any of that change coming?
It's all a matter of perspective. If you compare it to 10 years ago, 100%. If you compare it year to year, it's difficult to gauge. Mm-hmm. But if I've been in this industry now for 16 years building Metropolis, and I think I would say in the last 10 years alone, I've seen huge changes. Mm-hmm. So let's look at from which aspects, right? One is if you look at consumer awareness, people have become more aware of their own health, at least in metro cities. The parathas for breakfast and the samosas for lunch are slightly changed to at least bake samosas and no dollops of ghee on the parathas. But more importantly, people are trying to find out what's happening inside their body. See, most people have a hypothetical idea that fitness is about how you look in the mirror, and fitness is about how you feel and how you are inside your body. And unfortunately, a lot of infections and diseases manifest only when they're in late stages, which is why it's very important to get an annual health checkup done and a wellness checkup done that tells you what is going on inside your body, and that also get it done from a specialist, not from any random place. That's one of the things that we sort of promote. With that, we've seen people get more health aware, more brand conscious, and the brand conscious means they're getting more quality conscious. They're willing to spend a little bit more on their health. The other thing is with infrastructure, with money coming into the sector, infrastructure is expanded, which means now things are much more accessible. To give you an example, patients used to travel from remote parts of Bihar to Patna for primary care and then to Delhi for tertiary care. Okay. Now there are hospitals in Patna. Now we have diagnostic centers in tier 3 towns, in Salem in Tamil Nadu, in Sholapur in Maharashtra. So we are taking healthcare to people versus expecting them to leave their work, travel when they're sick and come to metro cities. And that's revolutionizing healthcare in smaller towns of India.
The health situation, even women specific for India, has been on the low for quite some time. Do you see a change coming in there with the kind of money that's getting pumped into the health sector? More people are coming forth and talking, like you said, there's more awareness even at the grassroots level. Do you think that is going to change, or where do you see that phase?
Again, I think there have been some significant changes. If you see the mortality rate of women when they were pregnant and giving birth used to be really, really high because they had just no access to any even a basic OT or an emergency care if there was a complication in the delivery. That's improved. So we've seen those kind of, the women mortality rate and the infant mortality rate come down on pregnancy. But there are many areas which are not addressed. We still have not, very poor quality standards in a lot of parts of India, be it women care or any other care. We are still seeing women in India being very anemic, and that's because of not good nutrition, not always having the right vitamins, and usually in the house, if there's less food, everybody in the house gets fed and the woman gets the least amount of food, and that's what leads to poor nutrition, leads to poor hemoglobin and poor, a high amount of anemia. So like that, I think there are quite a lot of issues which, are there in women's health, which go undetected, undiagnosed, unsupported. And those are some of the issues that we're trying to bring to the fore.
We see a lot of issues that get interlinked, one leads to another. Do you think any kind of corporate collaborations or, the big brands coming together would aid in the betterment for the society at large?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great idea and something I wish we were able to all execute. Because today all of us are spending money with the right intent, but unfortunately it's a big country and it's happened in pockets and silos and in independent initiatives, which possibly if we were to collaborate much more, we could have a much larger impact. I wish there was a way to make that happen, but till the time that happens, at least our agenda is to keep doing what we can do best, and really be able to promote good health, good wellness, preventive care, and enough diagnosis. There should never be overdiagnosis, but importantly, same way, there shouldn't be undetected diseases. A lot of the time, cancers are found in phase 4. PCOS is found when people are infertile. How can we diagnose these things? And for that, first people have to take the health in their own hands and be really careful and vigilant about finding out what's happening inside their body, and not just be happy with feeling I'm fine.
The government is a very important stakeholder in any kind of schemes that are provided to the country. Have you planned to collaborate with them in any way to kind of reach to the more grassroots levels with the kind of techniques you all have, or have you seen some of their schemes work wonders for the people that you all have reached out to?
I think the government has tried pockets of effort, and I think some of the places where they've made effort have worked.
Okay.
I think if you see an HIV, they've done a lot of work, and I think there has been a significant impact, be it through NACO, which they do a great amount of work, and it's I think they've really managed to curtail the spread of HIV infection. India has, unfortunately, even today is the number 2 country in the world with HIV positive rates. But the good news is that we're still at about 5 million odd, and it hasn't increased significantly. Versus in countries like South Africa, it continues to expand rapidly. So that would be one area. The other area I think on which they've made a good impact is TB. They've set up, they've invested a lot of money. A lot of other NGOs have invested a lot of money. We've partnered with government to really spread the awareness and testing for TB as experts in the area, and that's worked very well with the Clinton Foundation. We're now partnering with the government on many NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and also for specialized testing in district hospitals in key states. But health fundamentally in India is not a central subject; it's a state subject. So while the center takes up some of these things like HIV, TB from a central budget, actually the budget lies with the state, and the decision making lies with the state. So really, it's for the CMs and the state health ministers to take that platform, put their flags in the ground, and say that we need to make a difference in our states in health, and as Metropolis we're very happy to support them in doing that, be it through education, awareness, testing, in whichever way possible.
So you've done a large amount of work, which is very commendable. What are the kind of parameters that you all take into consideration to understand the social return on your investment?
That's a tough one, right? Because I think ROI, be it on marketing investments, has never been easy. Forget on social investments. It's a tough one. And I think the way we like to look at it is, one, I think the important thing is to partner with the right NGOs and the right partners, because, there's enough of jugaad happening even in NGOs in India. And I think the key thing is not to look at it as a way to either launder your money or to just show that you're doing CSR for the sake of it, but to genuinely have an impact. And I think that comes from the culture and purpose of an organization versus it just being a 2% of spend. So I think first thing is we've partnered with good organizations, like the PCOS Society of India, We Foundation, which is Women's Empowerment Foundation. They're doing some fantastic work, and we've partnered with them. The second thing is, I think, to look at benchmarking the impact on lives, the outcomes. The interesting part is not to say I spent X number of dollars or rupees. The interesting thing is to say how many lives did I impact? Have I been able to benchmark where they started and where, what the outcome of that has been?
So you said you've partnered with NGOs and you're doing good work there. I want to understand how open would you or corporates at large are to failure. There are times when projects don't work or your implementation method or process is going astray. How open are we really to failures?
I don't think it's really much of a choice. I think when you try things, the only thing you're assured of is failure. Because if you try 10 things, there will be only 5 or 6 that work, and there will be 3, 4, 5 that will not work. And I think it's only the people who don't attempt are the ones who never fail. So I know we have the purpose of attempting and we have the purpose of making an impact. I'm sure we're going to have our mistakes along the way. We will have our failures along the way. I'm not afraid of it. When I've built my business as well, I've had many failures. Fortunately, more successes. So therefore, we're leaders in what we do. But that doesn't worry me at all. There will be some money that will get spent without having the required impact. But there will be money that will be spent which has great impact. And I think that always outweighs the failures.
Okay. Where do you see the sphere of CSR changing in the next 10 years from what we saw 10 years back, where we had the whole philanthropy phase of it? Now the mandate is there's a compulsion to spend, but the problem is people aren't able to find good projects. So where do you see that going the next 10 years?
If you say globally, probably I would say slightly differently, India slightly differently. I think India, we're still in a phase where I think maybe it's a hangover from the 70s where we felt the need to grab and hold on to things. So I think we're still getting used to the mindset of philanthropy. I don't think it's still considered very cool in India to be philanthropic. And I think that's the first step. People talk about they salute some of the people who have done philanthropy, especially some of the very rich people. But they don't condemn the ones who don't. There's more hero worship of people who build value and get rich regardless of philanthropy. So I think first we need to get really this mindset of saying that people need to make impact. And I think philanthropy is a small part of that. You can make impact in many ways. You can make impact through philanthropy. You can make impact by creating, by giving your time. You can do impact by building businesses. The key thing is what intent are you building the business? If you're building the business, or if I'm building the business with the only intent of creating financial value for myself and for my shareholders, which are a handful of people, then you're capitalist in the traditional sense. But if we reform our minds to say that we not only want to create value for ourselves, but share it with not only our shareholders, but with the people that help build the business, with our employees who come from these segments which need social upliftment, with their families, then suddenly, and with the customers who've helped you get there, then suddenly you have spread that value, you've spread that impact, and it becomes more and more instead of a capitalist enterprise, you're moving towards a social enterprise. And I think that's the direction that most corporates will probably need to start heading. Because the truth is, none of us can succeed in isolation. We can only succeed together. And I think if we spend that money in our ecosystems, then I think we're better off.
Volunteerism has become a very big part in terms of the approach, because the individual also is very important as a stakeholder. How much of that do you apply in terms of your employees at work? And how far do you see that also going?
To be honest, being in healthcare, we already expect our employees to go way and beyond, their call of duty. We've sort of, our core value in our organization is, that we may be getting hundreds of thousands of samples per day. But you've got to treat every sample like it's your mother's sample. You've got to give it that special attention. You've got to give it that extra love. It cannot be a factory where it's just a number to you. But you've got to make sure, because that patient who has given their blood is got a lot of anxiety because it's their mother's health or their father's health, and you have to treat that as own. So we see our employees not look at time. They come if required at 6 in the morning. They will stay till 9 o'clock at night without an expectation of overtime or without an expectation of a thank you, but as part of the purpose of working with Metropolis. And I think therefore they do it every day. I don't expect them then to show their side of empathy through volunteerism, because I think they're living it and breathing it on a daily basis.
Do you see all the stakeholders coming together, the corporates, the NGOs, the individuals? Because sometimes it's mainly they cut the check and they give it, and there's not much involvement. And the corporate being the main person, he can make so much of a difference and reach out to people. Do you see all of them coming together as teamwork?
I think there are some organizations who are doing great work, and I think there are some large, especially MNCs, I think, who are doing a lot of work. But if you go fundamentally by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, most people need to come to a place where they feel they've done enough and they've gathered enough before they're willing to give back. And I think what's important is that stage comes for everybody at very different stages of life. The key thing is to have introspection, to say, when does it come for me? I think there's no judgment for anybody else. Personally, for myself, I feel, I've been building this business for 16 years. I've been, very lucky, and our team has been very lucky that we've managed to build a very successful business with financial value and impact. And I feel more and more the need now to give back and to really focus on that. So, I'm sitting here today at our launch of one of the 5 projects that we're doing in our, CSR. Not big, because we don't see it as just a checklist in CSR, but we see it as something that's going to make this organization evolve into a better organization in the times to come. Because that has to go into the DNA of every employee, and that can only start at the top.
Okay. You said you've been in the business for 16 years. Looking at the health indicators of the country at large, where do you see the maximum of change coming, and where do you think we need to reach out for the change to at least catch up with the rest of it?
I think one of the biggest changes we need really is in some amount of minimum regulation. We have countries like UK and US which have ridiculous amounts of regulation, which have actually paralyzed those systems. We have countries like India which have no regulation, and really both of them are bad, because today in India the patient is unfortunately the guinea pig. There is no regulation on who can run a pathology laboratory. Anybody and everybody can run a path lab. Nobody checks what's happening behind the scene. There are 100,000 labs in India, of which 300 are accredited. And those people who went for accreditation did it voluntarily. So you can imagine the ones who are going for it voluntarily are usually the ones who are following good practices. The guys who are saying, I don't want anybody to come and check. You don't know what's happening behind the doors. So it's a very scary place for patients, because you don't know when you go into a hospital what is the record of that doctor. You don't know how many failures and successes he had for appendicitis surgery on his record, because no hospital publishes that data, while in the US they do. You know exactly what is the record of a hospital and a doctor before you go in. The same way with the path lab, there's minimum, at least some regulation. And I would urge the government to put some minimum regulation. Don't over-regulate, but some basic, like you need to have equipment, you need to have a pathologist, you need to have some quality control, you need to have somebody checking as to what's happening in the path lab. That doesn't exist today, and I think it's very, very much needed to really help the patient stand up for their own rights.
All right. Ma'am, could you tell me very briefly what is CSR to you?
I think CSR to me is really just a way to have impact, as I said, and it's a way to bring it into the DNA of the company. Today we have a common saying in Metropolis that integrity and accuracy and empathy are the key drivers in our DNA, and that's how we've built this organization with purpose. And I think the 4th pillar has to be giving back. And I think to me that's what CSR means. It's only a way and a route to keep in mind that the ecosystem has to be as successful as you.
Ma'am, it's been very insightful and lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for talking to me.
It was lovely to talk to you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.